everyone, Elsie Jensen here. Today we are going to make a white chicken chili with some apple turnovers. So let's start by, we're going to kind of snip up our chicken here, season it up, and we're going to pop it in the oven to kind of cook so we can shred it and add it into our chili towards the end. I'm going to just use my kitchen shears here, and we're going to make a bunch of little slits down the side. This is going to allow the spices and all the great flavorings to kind of permeate it, and it's going to help it cook up a little bit faster, especially since this is a ginormous piece of chicken. We are going to drizzle a little bit of Worcestershire over it. That's going to give it, kind of cut through the fat, make it nice and tender and delicious. And then I kind of want a little bit of a smoky flavor on it, so we're going to add a little bit of liquid smoke, just a little bit. I always pour it in my cap first and then pour it over so I don't go too heavy-handed on it, because it does have a lot of flavor. And then we are going to sprinkle it with some oregano. And a little bit of cumin. There we go. I want to make sure it comes out. Some onion powder. And then a little bit of ancho chili powder. And then a little bit of garlic salt. And then we're going to just drizzle it with a little bit of olive oil, and we'll squeeze a little bit of lime juice over it. But I like to season it up, make sure it has lots of flavors kind of going into the oven, so that the chicken just adds more flavor to our fish. Oh, my dog. He is always, I swear. You gonna make it over there, Loki? These dogs have really short snouts, and they are always kind of making this weird little thing when they get a little hair or whatnot. But we're going to squeeze a little bit of lime juice over our chicken, and we're going to go pop this in the oven. So my oven is set at 400 degrees because that's what we're going to be cooking our apple turnovers at. So we're going to just roast this at that same time, and we'll take this out towards the end to throw into our final dish. I'm just going to pop it in here. And it's going to take like 20 plus minutes to kind of cook all the way through, but we want it to be just nice and cooked and shredded for it. Okay, while we are waiting for that, let's get our apples going for our turnovers. Now I've got 4 apples here. They're kind of smaller ones. You could do 3 large ones as well. But we're going to kind of cut them in half. And let me grab my good knife over here. And then we'll core them, peel them, and slice them up. So let me get all of these guys kind of cut in half first. And these are pink ladies, which I love using pink ladies, both for eating and for baking. They are a firm and kind of a tartar apple, so they work well. A bit sweeter than Granny Smith, so you don't need quite as much sugar in them. But I think they're great ones for like that dual purpose. Okay, we're going to give these a quick peel, and then we'll slice them up nice and thin, and then we're going to kind of do a pre-cook in our Dutch oven over here on the stove, because apple turnovers are only going to bake in the oven for, you know, like 18-20 minutes max, and you want them, it's not enough time for the apples, if you were to use raw apples, to get nice and tender. So I'm going to pre-cook them and add a little bit of cornstarch so they're not too liquidy, and that way they'll be nice and tender and flavorful on the inside, versus just using like a raw apple that you've tossed in sugar. So we're going to take off these skins, because apple skins do not get tender when you cook it up. Now sometimes I'll make like pear turnovers, and I thought about it, but my pears aren't quite ready. They're not ripe enough yet. But pears, those are fruit that if you wanted to, you could leave the skin on because they're a bit more tender, but I do tend to peel those as well. Same with like a nectarine, you could leave that skin on if you wanted to. Okay, let's get these ones. And then for our dough, we're just using the frozen puff pastry. It's one of those things, the convenience of just buying a frozen puff pastry versus making it yourself. Like, making yourself is delicious, but it's a lot of work. And so this is where I'm like, for something quick, the frozen is my go-to. Here we go. So I'm gonna just cut half of them up for right now, and then we'll get them going in there so they can start to get tender, and then we'll put the other half in. So I've got them, and then you wanna slice these kind of small because you want them to get nice and tender and not to be too bulky where they constrict the apple turnovers. And I find that when I cut my apples, instead of doing long slices, I turn them on my quarters and I do shorter ones. That way you're gonna have just kind of smaller chunks of apples, which are a little bit easier to eat. I do this for my pies as well.
Teresa made your apples, your spiced apples, and they loved them.
Oh, I'm glad. Those are, I swear, whenever I make them, there's never any leftovers, and they all, like, Teddy is like, he just loves them. He'll eat his, and then he comes over to my plate and steals mine off of him, and I always leave him for him because I know how much he loves the spiced apples. But they are so good. And I feel like they're a great little, like, compliments to dinners. I know a lot of people don't eat fruit with dinner, but I've always served fresh fruit or cooked fruit with dinner. And so I feel like they're just a nice, especially when the weather's getting cold, nice serving of spiced apples or homemade applesauce. So good. Okay. Let's get this first batch in our Dutch oven so we can start kind of cooking it up. Let me get that apple seed out. And this way I have that bottom layer can start to cook. It allows it to cook up a little bit faster. I'm gonna turn my Dutch oven on like a 7, a medium high. Let me grab. And then I like to add a little pat of butter in here because we are going to be using some cornstarch to kind of thicken these up. And I find that when you have a little bit of fat in there with the apple liquid, it gives it a nicer texture. And like it gets rid of a little bit of that flour, like that, powdery taste to it. And then since we have 4 apples, and these are not Granny Smiths, but they are Pink Ladies, I'm just gonna use 3/4 of a cup of sugar. If I were using Granny Smith, I would use closer to a cup because Granny Smith is a bit more tart. A pinch more. So we've got our brown sugar in here. So 3/4. Then we're gonna add in about a teaspoon of cinnamon. Of course I miss it. So just a good shake over. And then about a teaspoon of vanilla. A little bit more. Loki Bruni. And we're gonna squeeze in half of a lemon. This just gives you this perfect kind of little tartness to it. You can also, I love using apple cider as well, but I am all out of apple cider. Here we go. Okay, let's give those a quick stir and let those start to kind of cook up and we can get the rest of these apple parts prepped. And then we're gonna work on our white chicken chili because it just feels like a white chicken chili day. So I'm gonna start coating these up and then we'll throw in the rest of the apples. And I like to do for my turnovers, I like to make sure, it's well spiced in the middle because you do have a lot of that puff pastry. So your middle needs to have like the apple gooey deliciousness, needs to have a good amount of flavor because it's gotta, work with the whole puff pastry. So let's get these guys, throw the rest of them in. And then do it. 4 apples, my recommendation, Granny Smith is always a classic, easy to use. Pink Ladies I think are great ones because you can use them both for cooking and for eating because I feel like they're a little bit nicer to eat. Avoid like Red Delicious. Those apples tend to get really mushy when you cook them up and they're just not the right flavor profile. a little bit left on here. I used to have one of those apple cores and peelers where you like pop the apple on and then you crank it up. I used to use it when I used to teach little kids. I used to always have it in my classroom and we'd use it to make homemade applesauce in the classroom. Or like just to give the kids little apple snakes, as I always called it, because they kind of were like a ribbon of apple. And I said, they're always cute, but it doesn't take any less time to use.
Can you go over what's all in the apples right now?
Yes, so right now we added in about 1.5 tablespoons of butter, 3/4 of a cup of brown sugar, a teaspoon of vanilla, and a teaspoon of cinnamon, and half a juice from a lemon. And we're just gonna kind of cook those over, our medium-high heat until they're nice and tender. Then we'll throw in our a little bit of cornstarch to thicken it up because you don't want it too runny or you'll get more of a soggy turnover. And then we'll pop those in the oven to bake up. So let's get these last ones in. And I've got 4 apples in here, 4 Pink Lady apples that we have peeled and kind of sliced up nice and thin. There we go. I'm gonna just make sure I coat them up with that lovely kind of sauce that's forming. There we go. And then we'll just pat it down. I'm going to turn it now down to about a 6.5, so just a little bit down, now that we've started to sweat out its liquid.
You have a question? In your opinion, what's the best eating apple?
Oh, I feel like that is a really personal choice. I personally love Pink Ladies, hence why I always buy Pink Ladies, because I always find that they are firm and they are like the perfect sweet and tartness to it. So Pink Ladies are my favorite, but I am like the worst judge of it because I do not really like fruit. I am much more of a vegetable person. I'd rather eat a salad than a fruit salad. I just have never really liked it because I don't like things that are tart. So most berries I find are too tart for me, and I'm not a huge apple fan, except I love grapefruits. That's like the one exception. I do love grapefruit. It's my favorite fruit of all. But for apples, if I'm gonna eat an apple, it's gonna be a Pink Lady. Those are the ones I always buy. Okay, let's get our white chicken chili going here. I'm gonna turn on my Dutch oven and we're gonna start heating up about 1 tablespoon or so of olive oil. I might need to move on to my next bottle here, but I think I might have enough. We'll see. And then I'm going to do kind of a smaller dice on these because, again, I don't want any super huge pieces of vegetables in here. Kind of just cut it up small so you can get a little bit in every bite. And I remember the first time I had white chicken chili, I feel like I was in elementary school, 5th grade. My mom had gotten this cookbook from somebody. It was like a gift, and she opened up and she made it. And I was never a big fan of chili, like regular chili at the time, but I had this and I absolutely loved it because I like a Great Northern bean or a cannellini bean a little bit nicer than the kidney beans or pinto beans. And so I feel like this is a great one for those who don't really care for beans as much because these beans are much more mild in them. But I remember her, and then I made it a couple of times after because she taught me how to make it. And I feel like it was in this like 1,000 soups recipe book that she got her first thing. And I've tweaked it over the time to make it exactly how I like it. But it has been one of those things, a recipe that has been with me for a long time. And it's kind of modified from something I had growing up. Let me mix this in. Now, I do not make my spicy because, again, I don't like a lot of spice in there. So I kind of sub out some of like what would be jalapenos for a mild pepper. I'm going to grab a little bit more olive oil here. I'll put it in here. recently the store has had these little bottles on sale. Buy one, get one free. So I'm like, wow, I'm gonna grab the little ones, but they don't go as far. Okay. We've got our onions now. We're gonna let them kind of start to saute up. And while we're waiting for that, we've got for our peppers, I've got some sweet peppers, some yellow sweet peppers, and then some shishito peppers, which 1 in 10 shishito peppers have a little bit of heat to it. So if I get one, it'll give just a little bit, which will be lovely. And then we're gonna do a couple cloves of garlic as our base for this. There we go. I'm gonna turn this down to about a 5 now. And we're gonna kind of let those caramelize up. And get my garlic minced up here. Or this is gonna be probably like a 1.5 tablespoons of garlic, but I really want the garlic to pop in this because I feel like it really complements the beans and the chicken and the sour cream and cheese that we're gonna put in the base of this. So we'll mince this guy up. Now you could always use garlic if you want as well. You'd probably use just about a tablespoon of it. I find garlic is a little bit more acidic, so I'd use a little bit less. There we go. And just nice and fine over it. And then we're gonna give our apples a little bit of a stir. They've got a nice little rolling boil going on as they are gonna get nice and tender. The onion is getting me. Okay, you can see they're starting, I've got a lot of them starting to get a little bit more translucent, which means they're kind of getting darker in color. They're not as like white and opaque. Once I've got like a majority to that nice kind of translucent, that's when I know that they'll be ready to put into the puff pastries. There we go. While we're waiting, let me clear this up over there and then we'll finish up chopping up some of our peppers. And I'm gonna have to start rolling out our puff pastry here in just a little bit. Get it ready to stuff with our apples. Going to dry off my countertop from a little bit of the apple juice because I don't want my puff pastry to stick to it. Okay. Let's give our onions a little stir here. And then got my garlic. Once my onions get a nice caramelization to it, then we'll throw the garlic in. But I want my onions to have just a minute or 2 by themselves in the pan to allow them to really get a nice caramelization, bring the sweetness out, which will be nice with the chicken.
You have a question? What are you sauteing the apples in?
The apples are in, we have butter, brown sugar, a little bit of vanilla, cinnamon, and some lemon juice. And then it's just their natural juices that are coming out to make the body of it for it. So be a nice kind of simply sweetened apple base to it. I find my favorite kind of apple base is just cinnamon. I know you can add, ginger and cloves and nutmeg and allspice and all those things, but I just like a simple cinnamon. I just feel like it doesn't overcomplicate them, and just as I feel like the perfect little harmony. Okay, we've got our sweet peppers at least minced up here. Give this a little stir, and then we're going to start working on our pastries here because these are starting to get pretty tender and looking good. We'll add in our cornstarch right before we start to fill them though. So I have my puff pastry that I took out a couple hours ago so it can get to room temperature. Because you can't just take it out of the freezer right away or it'll be rock hard and you won't be able to work with it. So now with the puff pastry, you've got to roll it out some. You can't just leave it at this thin or at this like thickness, or it will be way too thick on your strudels or your turnovers. So just roll it out a little bit to thin it out. That way it's just not too thick. There we go. Perfect. Now that our apples are looking pretty good, I'm going to add my cornstarch in. And we're just going to kind of, it's going to be maybe up to a tablespoon or so, but we're going to just kind of lightly dust it on first. If you want to, you know, you can always pull some of the liquid out and make a slurry and add it in. But I find that when you are working with this like small amount of liquid, it works better just to kind of dust it over the top. But we want it to form a nice gel and kind of hold up all of that liquid, the flavorful liquid that has kind of come out of the apples, the juices with the sugar. And this gel will allow it to be nice and like gooey inside the turnover without it making it soggy. There we go. And so the reason in the very beginning I added in about 1.5 tablespoons of butter, I find that when you use the butter with the cornstarch, it gets rid of that kind of cornstarchy flavor, that pasty flavor that you can get sometimes with the cornstarch. So I really like using that. Okay, let's see. Let it thicken up here and see if I need to add any more. But let me give my onions a little bit of a quick stir. Perfect. We'll use a little bit more. And just again, sprinkle little by little until you get the right consistency. You don't want to put too much in there. I think we're getting there. There we go. Push some of those guys that are hiding down on the sides. And don't dump it all in at one time either, because you don't want, if you dump it all at one time, you're more likely to get it to congeal together into kind of like a ball. And once it goes into a ball, it doesn't really ever dissolve. Okay, I think this is good. We've got a good enough base, and once it heats up a little bit, I think it will thicken up just a smidge more. Okay, let me grab a knife here so we can kind of slice down each like sheet of part of pastry, puff pastry here. We'll make 4 good sized turnovers. And we're gonna cut it into squares.
You have a question. Are you making dinner tonight?
We are going to be doing a late night because we typically on Fridays try to get takeout or go out to eat, and so we'll be doing that tonight, but we will do a late night. I've got we're gonna have bagels tomorrow, so I'm gonna prep up some bagels. I've got my chocolate starter going, so we're gonna make some both chocolate bagels and regular sourdough bagels for tomorrow, and then some snacks for the weekend. So we'll be on later tonight, like 11-ish or so, but no dinner stream. Okay. I find, don't fill them on your, on here, place them on your baking sheet, and then we'll be able to fill them and fold them. They're really difficult to transfer once you have them filled. So that's why we're gonna do like 4 at a time, and then we'll have a little bit more room. Beautiful. This is thickening up nicely. I'm going to turn off my heat. Beautiful.
So what's your favorite fast food restaurant?
Ooh, I really love Chipotle because I love that kind of fresh thing. Or we have this like Chinese restaurant that's near us. It's just like a mom and pop shop, and I absolutely love it. So delicious. So I think those are my fine things, although I have to say, I mean, it just depends on. I do love Five Guys and Chick-fil-A, but only when they're, you know, I feel like I never get Chick-fil-A, but because it's never open when I want it. those are my favorites, I would say. Okay, we've got these kind of put down. So we're gonna start filling them up. I'm gonna scoop in, and what you're gonna do is just on one corner of them, you're gonna scoop in your little base for it. So just on half of it. And then you're gonna fold it over to make it, and then once we've filled them all up, we'll crimp the edges with a fork. But we'll get these first 4 in here. And I'm gonna do this one. I'm gonna try to, I gotta see, I gotta fold it here so I can make sure I'm lining it up correctly. There we go. It's like a package, that way I can fit these on nicely on my thing. But you see, having these nice tender apples is going to make the inside of this perfect. Otherwise, if you just use fresh apples, like that you've sliced up and tossed, they're not going to get tender enough. And so they'll still be kind of firm when you go to like eat the apple turnover. There we go. And I will say, don't overfill with apple either, because it kind of weighs down your puff pastry and it will make it a little bit more challenging to, like, for it to puff up, and you're more likely to get an ooze out. There we go. And then I'm gonna grab my fork, and you're just gonna kind of press the edges together and kind of crimp them up, and then we'll work on the next 4. This is gonna kind of seal it together, and then we will make a slit in them, and then we're gonna brush them with a little bit of like an egg wash, and that's gonna give you that nice little shimmer on them. There we go. Over here. And this is just going to prevent all that goodness from oozing out. And then we're going to pop we'll take a little break, we'll pop our garlic in our onions, because we've got a good caramelization going on here. Give them a little stir. Beautiful. We've got the nice browning going, which is going to add a lot of flavor in it. Let's get these, and they get too close to the edge, so they get a little bit trickier to crimp up. Here we go. Okay, we've got our first kind of 4 right here. Let's pop our garlic in real quick, and then we're going to roll out our next batch. But we'll let this saute up for just about a minute, and then we'll pop our peppers in, and then we'll get our chichitos in there. And turn that down just a smidge. And then let's roll out our next kind of puff pastry, and we'll get that kind of going. So fold it out, and then you just kind of want to roll it to where it's almost double in size, but not quite. But don't roll it too thin, or it won't work, like it will not shape as well. You'll more likely tear it. But you want it thin enough so it kind of covers over there. Okay, let's get these guys on here. Then we'll start filling them, we'll brush them, and we'll get them thick enough. Here we go.
You have a question? Is a 1 hour thaw for the puff pastry okay?
Yeah, a 1 hour should do well. They always say a minimum of 40 minutes. I always kind of take them out, you know, like an hour to a little bit before. And even if it defrosts all the way, you can pop it in the refrigerator to keep it like thing, because you don't want it to get room temperature too warm, because then it's won't be like firm enough to work with. They'll get a little too kind of soggy here. Okay. Get these last two prepped up.
And will the kids eat this?
Oh yes, these are, I will say, Torn and my husband's favorite. And then the white chicken chili they'll love as well. I will say it's a very mild chili, so it's not too like overpowering or strong in spices. I'm gonna throw in my sweet peppers now that my garlic's had a chance, and then we'll finish up our last one. And we'll get these guys kind of going. Here we go. We've got our sweet peppers going in, and then we'll slice up after we're done with our pastries. We'll slice up our taquitos and get those in. Let's see. Let me rotate this, and let's get our last one. Here we go. Put this nice, get every little bit here. And this is kind of like a cinnamon caramel apple filling to it, because that butter and that brown sugar is just going to be such a nice rich kind of coating on the apple, which is just, I feel like, so delicious. Smush these edges, kind of hold them together. Here we go. Now, and you just have to do it on the sealed part, because this is what's kind of preventing any of the apple bits to ooze out. You're still going to get a little bit of residual ooze out, but this holds the majority of the base in there. Let's get this guy.
You have a question? What's a good use for the leftover filling?
You could drizzle that over ice cream, so I feel like a puff pastry would taste great with some vanilla ice cream, and that drizzle is almost like an apple caramel. We're going to do just a little kind of slit in each one. This is going to allow the steam to kind of pop up out while it bakes, so that you don't pop your puff pastries. And then we're going to brush them with a little bit of an egg wash. So I'm just going to put my egg in here with about a tablespoon of water, maybe a little less. And I can actually use this for. And we're going to whisk it up, and then we'll brush this over. This is going to give you that like shine on your puff pastry. Otherwise, it will have a very dry look to it. This gives you that bakery finish. And so it's just one egg mixed with about a tablespoon of water, or between a teaspoon and a tablespoon. And then you're just going to brush this mixture over the top of your puff pastry. There we go. Kind of coat it up, because if you miss a spot, it won't be shiny there. And then these are going to go in the oven at 400 degrees for about 18 minutes on there. And then we'll check, and they should be perfect by then. Sometimes they need a minute or two more. But rolling them out thin allows them to cook up a little bit nicer and a little bit more evenly. Okay, and then, so I don't have too much burnt caramel on, I'm just gonna wipe up any of this little apple drizzle that just slithered out. Let's go pop these guys in the oven to bake up. So, 400 degrees for, we're gonna do about 18 minutes. Check in there. I've got my chicken in here, and we'll take a kind of a quick peek at it. But I'm just gonna slide it down so it can continue to cook until we're ready to throw it in there. hopefully when these are done, we'll be ready to eat. We are going to make a nice cinnamon vanilla glaze to drizzle over the top of them, which adds again a bit more of that pop of flavor. You could probably honestly incorporate this caramel sauce in a glaze, and that would actually probably be delicious as well.
Could you just sprinkle cinnamon sugar on the top?
You're gonna want a little bit of base because the cinnamon sugar wouldn't necessarily hold well. Like you could brush it with a little bit of butter and do that. You could definitely do it. For me, I feel like puff pastries have always got that little like drizzle of glaze on them. Okay, give this a good stir up. I'm gonna turn it to a 4 now. Let's get our shishito peppers. I'm using these in place of jalapenos so that I don't have too spicy of it, but you could also use a poblano or whatever really pepper that you want. Shishitos are nice because only 1 in 10 are spicy. And I bought a bag of it the other day and I used some of them to make a lo mein. So I'm just kind of using up the rest of them. And I was like, oh, they'll go perfect in my chile. And then just to get these seeds out, just kind of take your thumb and kind of go through the base of them. Now these seeds aren't like super spicy. It's not like, you know, jalapenos where the seeds are like the really spicy part. So you don't have to really worry about that or them kind of like stinging or burning your hands. These are very mild. But I do like to take them out. You can leave them in there if you want to, but just for a nicer, better texture, I take them out. Okay. You can see they were quite seedy. Just get these all off before I start kind of chopping them up. And then I'm just gonna, just like with my sweet peppers, just kind of a simple dice on them. That way you'll get a little bit of, you know, pepper in every bite. You could also use green bell peppers as well. Those also work. I always find when you're sticking with the colors, when I go with my color profiles for white chicken chili, I stick with either the yellow peppers or the green so that it kind of keeps in that white, yellow, green motif versus when I'm doing like a, you know, my traditional chili, then I'll use like the red and orange peppers. Here we go. So just a little bit of this dice here. If you're going to use a jalapeno, you're going to want to mince it up a lot smaller so that you don't get too much spice in each bite. But since these are more mild, you don't have to do that. There we go. Beautiful. And then we're going to start adding in our spices, and then we'll add in our broth and then our beans. So for our spices, then we're going to use pretty much the same ones that we used on our chicken. We've got oregano, so we're going to use about a teaspoon of dried oregano. And I always like to heat it up in the pan with the sauteed veggies because I feel like the oil and the heat helps the spices come out and then kind of blend in better to our base. And we're going to add in about a teaspoon of cumin. This is going to give it a nice earthy flavor to it. Now we're going to add in some ancho chili powder, just a little bit because I want a little bit of that flavor, but I don't want so much that it's going to give it too much of a color. So about a half a teaspoon. If you can find white chili powder, definitely use that. That's a little bit more difficult to find, but if you can find it, that works great. We're going to do about a tablespoon of onion powder. And then we'll do a little shake over of our garlic salt, but we are going to be using some chicken bouillon here in just a second. So just a smidge, like a half a teaspoon to a teaspoon. We're going to let all these spices kind of heat up. There we go. Let them bring out their flavors. And then we're going to add in our broth and our beans, and then once our chicken's ready to shred, we'll add it in there. I'm going to actually add in my beans first after I rinse them so that I can see where the base is because I don't want to add in too much chicken broth or water because I don't want my chili to be too runny. So we're gonna be using, you can either use both of the same or mixture. I'm gonna be using cannellini beans, I always call them the wrong thing, and then Great Northern ones. So these are white kidney beans, and these are like the white version of a pinto bean. And I find that they are delicious. And I like the mixture of them both because when I eat a traditional chili, I kind of have the kidney beans and the pinto beans, so. And make sure you rinse your beans because we don't want that starchy water in our chili. It will just add a bad texture and taste to it. There we go. Give them a good rinse. Get the first one done. And then we'll do the second one. Just rinse off all that starchy water. And we'll add them in there. And you can see they're just slightly different sizes. The cannellini bean is slightly bigger than the Great Northern one, which gives you a little bit of both, kind of the size and texture for it. Okay, let's coat our beans up with all of our seasoned base here. Beautiful. And then I'm gonna add in just enough liquid to kind of cover up the beans with it. We are gonna be adding in some sour cream and cheese as well, but you don't want it to be a soup. You want it to be kind of a thicker base for it. So I'm gonna use water with a scoop of chicken bouillon. So I'm gonna just pour in, I think it's gonna be about 2 cups, but I never know until I've got the liquid in here.
Do you ever make navy bean soup?
I have a couple times before. I will say my family isn't as keen on beans. Now, my parents and I, and then my little boys love beans, but my middle one, so I don't do it as often, but I might have to whip it up here soon because I do love a good bean soup. There's just like, you can get this like 15 bean package of dried beans and I make the best soup with it. Oh, it's so good. Okay, so I have just enough kind of liquid here to cover up my beans. You can just see them peeking through at the top. So I used about 2 cups of water there. And then we're gonna put a scoop of our chicken bouillon in here to season it up. And then we're gonna grab our chicken out to start shredding it, and then we've gotta grate up some cheese and make a glaze, and we'll be kind of towards the end. If I can, oh, there we go. If I can open my bouillon. So we're gonna do a nice kind of good scoop, about a tablespoon of our bouillon here. We're gonna mix it in. I want it to be a little bit stronger flavor because we are gonna be adding in sour cream. So we wanna be able to flavor that plus the chicken. So we're gonna have a bit more bulk into our soup. And then we'll finish it, of course, with some cheddar cheese and green onions and some fresh lime juice. So let me give this a quick stir. And then I wanna see where our flavor's at, if I wanna add anything else in.
What is chicken bouillon?
That is essentially like chicken broth, like a thing that has been reduced down. So you kind of make it with like cooking up like the chicken, the carcasses and whatnot, and you make it down to a really like paste of a, you know, like a reduction. Perfect. Okay. Let's go grab the chicken out of our oven. That way it can cool off just a minute before I shred it. And then you can sneak a peek at the popovers or the turnovers. Not popovers, those are very different things. Okay. They're puffing up nicely, looking beautiful. I'm gonna give them a quick rotation so that the back of my oven, the front will get them, but they're looking gorgeous here. Perfect. And then we'll make a glaze for them. But here is my ginormous chicken breast that I have. cooking up that we seasoned with all the same great flavors that we have in our soup. I'm gonna let it sit there and kind of cool off for just a second. While we're doing that, let's go make our glaze for our turnovers. We're done with this. So I'm got my powdered sugar, and this is just my simple, basic, super easy glaze. Let me grab my cream out of the fridge. So we're gonna just start with our base. About 2 tablespoons of like heavy whipping cream. And I find cream gives you the richer texture, but you can also use a milk or whatnot, or for it, it'll just be a little bit thinner. We're gonna add in about a half a teaspoon of vanilla. And then a half a teaspoon of cinnamon. And I like the cinnamon because I feel like it gives a little extra pop on there. But you could also just keep it as a plain vanilla. So a good little shake over. Now I'm gonna get my whisk here. Kind of whisk those together, and then we're gonna add in our powdered sugar, a little at a time until we get the right consistency, enough that it can drizzle over our things, but it's not too thin that it just completely runs off. So I'm gonna start with around a half a cup, and then I add a little bit more until we get right to that texture. Now, if you use milk instead of cream, you're gonna need to use more powdered sugar because it is thinner and therefore it will take a lot more. But it's gonna be up to a cup of powdered sugar, depending on, I've got about 2/3 in right now. And I just add it in slowly and slowly because it is much easier to add the powder in. If you keep adding the liquid and liquid, you're gonna end up with a lot of glaze. And just keep whisking it until you get any lumps out. Just need a little bit more for this. And then we'll let that sit and we'll be ready to drizzle over our chili, or not our chili, our turnovers. That would be weird on our chili. I think that is pretty good. It typically with the cream, it will slightly thicken up when you know, as it sits there. Okay. We're gonna get our chicken in here, and then we'll get our sour cream in, and then our cheese and our chili will be pretty much done. So we're gonna take our chicken out, and then I'm gonna grab 2 forks, kind of shred it here. I know I have technically somewhere in my house, I have these bear claws that my mom got me to shred chicken. I need to find them. They'd be great for this, but you don't need fancy bear claws. 2 forks work well. And I will say, it shreds nicely because I made these nice little slits in the chicken so that it kind of just cooks up really well. And again, we season this with oregano, cumin, a little bit of onion powder, ancho chili, garlic salt, little liquid smoke, some Worcestershire sauce, and some lime juice.
Everyone always asks how you grab pans that aren't they hot? Let's see.
It's not too hot.
That's pretty hot.
Yeah, it doesn't. I swear my hands, they can like pick up lava and hot coals. You know, they're cooking calluses. When you're so used to cooking, you grab lots of hot things, even momentarily. Although, you know, my children say I take like molten hot showers and I wash the dishes under the highest temperature. And it is true, I do use the highest temperature. We gotta kill all those germs. Yeah, you just get used to it. I guess I like things, you know, really hot. There we go. So we've got our chicken here, pretty much at it. And can you believe how much chicken came from just one chicken breast? It was a huge chicken breast. I don't know if we got like the Godzilla chicken here, but it was huge. Okay, we've got our beautiful chicken shredded up. Let me get some tongs and we'll pop that in our chili base here. And then we're gonna add in our sour cream and our shredded cheddar cheese. You can also use Kobe Jack cheese or Monterey Jack or pepper jack if you want a little bit of spice. I love cheddar, so cheddar is better, but it works well with this. But any of those kind of things, you could even use like a queso blanco or a quesadilla cheese if you wanted to. So we'll pop these all in here. Get all of this deliciousness in. And then we're gonna kind of stir it around, coat up that chicken with all of that lovely like flavored broth and that has all those spices in it, but we did spice up our chicken and I think that's really crucial as well because you don't want to put in just bland chicken in here. You want everything to have great flavor. Okay. So we've got our shredded oven roasted chicken in here. And I'm going to turn my temperature down now to a low. You don't want to put it on too high when we add in our sour cream and our cheddar cheese because it can cause it to kind of curdle and get a little bit gritty in texture. Let me open this up. And we'll grate some of our cheddar cheese to go in here as well. And then our turnovers, we should be about ready to eat up once our turnovers are out here in just a second or so. Okay. I'm gonna use this, we'll grate it up. You want about, I wanna say like a cup of cheese to go in here, plus whatever you wanna garnish on top with. But I mixed the cheese in the chili because this is gonna help thicken up that broth base and just make it so delicious and creamy. Here we go. We got about a cup here. I can't give you the whole block. Gotta feed the cameraman. There's a small chunk. He's very sad. I'm not giving him the whole block of cheese. Here we go. Okay, let me grab a spoon for my sour cream. We're gonna mix that in there because we've got less than a minute left on our turnovers. We're gonna put in about a half a cup of sour cream.
And you have a question, is this recipe posted?
We will post our live on the link on our page, so you can always recreate from there. So we typically get it up after the stream, you know, a few minutes to an hour or so, and it should be up there ready for you guys to cook along with me again. Okay, got your sour cream mix in there, and you can see how it gives the broth a really creamy base for it. Then we're gonna add in our cheese, and this is gonna help thicken up that base to it. So we've got our cheddar cheese in here. And again, I like to stick with a white cheese on there, white cheddar or a Monterey Jack, Kobe Jack, like the lighter fares. Okay, we've got that mixing. I'm gonna nice and low. Let's grab our turnovers out of the oven here. They should be a nice kind of brownish, golden brown color for them. Beautiful. Lobster claw under there. Look at them, beautiful golden brown. You've got that nice little, wherever the egg was a little bit thicker, you get that nice darker kind of shiny brown like you see on a brioche or whatnot. I like to mix when I do my egg with water to give it a lighter color. If you leave your egg a full one, you'll get a darker brown. But we'll drizzle these with our glaze. We just need to let them sit for about 2 minutes to cool off just a little bit, because if you put the glaze on while it's too hot, it runs instantly off. But there is our gorgeous apple turnovers. And we'll drizzle them in just a second when we finish up our soup here, or our chile.
Have you always enjoyed cooking and baking?
Yes, I have. I actually started cooking family meals when I was a kid at 13 for my family, like taking over the family dinner. So I have always really loved cooking and baking. It was actually like one of those things, like my stress reliever. In like high school, my mom would always come home and be like, "Oh, did you have a rough day?" Because there'd be like 10 different baked goods sitting on the counter. And I was like, "Well, I feel better now." So I have always loved it. I've got some green onions here. We're gonna cut them in. You always wanna add your green onions at the very end so that they keep their like form and their bright, you know, onion flavor to them. Chives also work well, or scallions. They're all in the same family. There we go. And they add a pop of pretty colors. And that's what I say. When I'm using my vegetables in here, I try to stick with the same kind of yellow, green colors for a white chicken chili.
Could you add the chicken drippings?
You could definitely add the chicken drippings in there. I normally do. I probably just kind of moved along there, but it adds great flavor as well in there for it. Okay, let's get our, I like to top my chili with some avocado. So we're just gonna prep up our avocado, slice up our lime, and then we'll drizzle our sauce over our apple turnovers, and we will be ready to serve up lunch. There we go. So I'm just gonna peel off the skin of my avocado. And that way I can slice it up kind of nicely. That way when we're kind of sprinkling it over.
And what are you making for dinner tonight?
So tonight we will actually be doing like our takeout kind of pickup. We like to do that on Fridays. But we will be doing a late night because I will be prepping some bagels for tomorrow and then making some treats for the weekend that we have on hand. So we'll be here around like 11 o'clock here. We're gonna be, I've been whipping up my chocolate starter, so I actually have a chocolate sourdough that I'm gonna bake up tonight as well. But we're gonna make some chocolate sourdough bagels as well as some regular ones. So we've got some good stuff here. Okay, let me get a little bit of cheese because we garnish with cheese as well. And then we'll drizzle, drizzle, drizzle. Okay. Let's slide this guy over here. And we're gonna take our glaze. Again, you want a nice kind of consistency of glue. This is our basic cinnamon vanilla glaze. The cinnamon is just gonna add another pop of flavor to the puff pastry part because our apples are seasoned with cinnamon and vanilla as well. And just drizzle over the top of each one to really get that nice little flavor. You wanna do it while they're still warm but not piping hot so that the glaze will kind of drizzle down and coat the whole pastry as well. Here we go. Beautiful. And I just find that the glaze gives you that little extra added sweetness because the puff pastry is, you know, very plain, so you just have that apple filling, and this gives you a little bit more of the deliciousness. Beautiful. So, pretty scrumptious. Let's serve up here, guys. Let me grab my board and we'll get a plate, my little cauldron for my chili. And we'll just have to make a little room over here. Move some of my spices out of the way. And then let me grab a ladle to lift up my chili. Okay. For lunch today, we will be having our white chicken chili full of our oven roasted chicken that we seasoned with cumin, oregano, lime juice, ancho chili powder. We've got Great Northern beans and cannellini beans in here, as well as a lovely kind of sour cream and cheese base. We have chopped up sweet peppers with and shishito onions. We're gonna top it with a little bit of cheddar cheese, a couple cubes of diced up avocado, and then a squeeze of fresh lime juice over the top to add, again, nice pop of flavor. And then we will be serving it with a delicious apple turnover that we glazed with our cinnamon vanilla glaze. That will be just delicious and fabulous, filled with our spiced apples inside in the puff pastry. So a simple but delicious lunch today. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us here. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I try to do live cooking shows every single day, kind of show you what we're making for our family and hopefully teach you guys something along the way. Again, we do upload all of our videos to the link on our page, so if you ever want to recreate any of these recipes, you can just go to that link and search for what we made. So we've got our white chicken chili and apple turnovers, and you can always watch and cook along with me again. We also have a link to our Amazon storefront that has all of our different cooking gear and gadgets in it. I've got my big baking sheets in there, my Dutch ovens, knives, cutting boards, all the different things that I use in the kitchen I have in there for you guys to check out. But again, thank you so much for